Hello everyone, Reza here. We are going to continue with our facial rigging for beginners series. In this video, I'm going to talk about facial expressions. Now for facial expressions and to create facial expressions, well, first thing you need to do is to study what type of facial expression you're looking for, and you need to look at as many references as possible considering the style of your character. If it's a realistic character, you can even sit in front of a mirror, look at your own facial expression and try to get inspired and get some ideas. For stylized facial expression, there are a lot of different resources online available. This is one example that I use. It's a blog called Jolly. I'm quite fond of this page, to be honest, because it's got a good collection of different facial expression and they're all stylized. I'm going to put the link to this page in the description below so you guys can have a look. But if you look really closely, to create facial expressions, you don't really just focus on the mouth. It's mouth, it's cheeks, the eyes, and the eyebrows. Sometimes the form of the face also changes. So we see a little bit of squash and stretch when you go from grumpy to surprise. This is a really big topic and sort of beyond the scope of this session, but I highly encourage you to study forms and shapes to see what sort of expression works for your own character. Now back to Maya. Now to explore tools inside Maya to create facial expressions, we basically have two broad categories, one for beginners and one for intermediate to advanced level. For intermediate to advanced level, obviously we are not going to cover that, but basically that's through joint-based controls that you plant around the eyes, mouth, and different areas of the character. Now, there are two main methods for beginners that I'm going to target. The first one, I will be demonstrating that in this session, and there's another method that I will be exploring in the next video, which I think would be our final video. I've got timestamps all around this video, so feel free to go back and forth and find the kind of area that you want to play. But if you're unfamiliar with this topic, then I highly encourage you to watch through the whole video and see if you can implement the same techniques to your project. Now, without any further ado, let's get to the first method for beginners to create facial expressions for your character. Now, obviously, we have few tools available to us to create some sort of an expression. So we have this, we have few controls available that we can kind of play around with and get some expressions out of our character. But this is certainly not enough, especially if the character is smiling. We don't have any smile controls for our character. So in a situation like this, if you are a beginner level, then there is a really easy to use tool available to you that you can make use of and create your own expressions for your own character. And the first technique that I'm going to explore is Blendshape. Now, Blendshape is type of a deformer, and if I go to rigging menu set, deform, Blendshape is the first one in the drop-down menu, at least in this version. Now, let's talk about what is Blendshape. Blendshape asks for a base geometry, and this is our base geometry. This is the one that we want to be deformed. You need to produce a target geometry, and that target geometry is the one that we modify, and through Blendshape we ask the base geometry to follow the target geometry. Very simple. For example, if I go to this target geometry and select one vertex, I can hold down B to increase the radius of my soft select, move this up and say this is my target geometry. You select the target geometry, you select the base geometry and just run Blendshape. Now what happens is on the base geometry, if I go to the channel box, Control A, we now have a Blendshape node. If I click on it, you can turn on and off the Blendshape. It's basically the activation attribute. And the second one, which usually the name of it is the name of this shape node, is the one that is linked to the target mesh. So I can middle mouse, slide to left and right, and you can see I have a weight of 0 to 1 to morph to the target Blendshape. And that's what you do to create Blendshape. Simple as that. Now I'm going to delete these two and going back to our rig. I already have the base and the base is locked. So I don't need to unlock it, but I need to create target. Control D to duplicate, and I need to unlock the duplicated mesh, W to select the move tool and move it aside. Now this is going to act as my target mesh. I can actually change this and have an effect on the base mesh. Now, one very important tip: never freeze transform your target mesh. See that value here? You need that. As soon as you freeze transform this, you're breaking the Blendshape functionality. So no modifying, no deleting, no changing the topology. We're just moving points to create expressions. If you think about that and keep that in mind, the rest is fairly straightforward. I'm going to Shift P to drop it into the outliner. I'm going to name it something meaningful, for example, blend shape, and then what sort of blend shape you would like to have, probably U01. Now for blend shapes, what artists do, they target two categories. One, they target phonemes. So basically, when you want to have a dialogue, you switch between different shapes to create your dialogue. That's one way. And the other way is to create the actual facial expression. So happiness, sadness, disgust, surprised, worried, so on and so forth. So it really doesn't matter which one you choose. Again, goes back to what you want to get out of your character, but basically that's how it goes. Now I'm going to zoom in, and we, for the most part, use the soft selection tool. So I can go to the component mode, and you can see soft selection is already enabled. If you don't know how to enable disable soft selection, it's letter B. So letter B on your keyboard, toggle it on and off. Now, one important thing is if I go to my select, double click on it to get its attribute, soft selection is here. Now by default, soft select is on, and if I select a point, you can see it's fairly difficult to, for example, select just the upper lip. You probably can get away with few bits and pieces. For example, select this bit and move it up, but still everything within this fall off region follows the direction of the move tool. Probably not the best use of soft select. So one tip that I always give to my students is just change this fall off mode from volume to surface. With that, if I select only few points, Maya looks at the surface and tries to separate them. So now I can freely move the upper lid without having an impact on the lower lid. Very useful. Another tip is to use symmetry. So it can be quite useful to use symmetry, especially if you would like to, for example, move both points or both ends down at the same time. So you don't need to do one and then the other one. Usually that's not going to be symmetrical, which is, in my opinion, good. I always tend to create asymmetrical poses, but sometimes you do want symmetrical poses. For that, you can select one and then go in here on the top shelf and say topology. You don't want to go world because the character is not sitting at the center of your scene, but topology works. Now, having a symmetrical object definitely works because all you need to do is just to click on the loop at the center once, and now Maya knows how to divide the two selection, and you have a symmetrical selection now. So, for example, that I don't know what sort of expression I would like to really get out of this. I'm just playing as I go, but that's pretty much the way that you do it. So, and remember, always keep that in mind. You're not just modifying the mouth. You probably want to have an impact on some parts of your model. So if the mouth stretches, those cheeks may come down a little, which is just normal. And again, how do you know this? By looking at the reference. Now, I've already gone ahead. If I go ahead and get rid of this, I've already gone ahead and made some expressions just to show you. This is what I have. For example, I have happiness. I have what the sort of expression. I have sort of a smirk, then worried, and then, for example, pronouncing some letters like U, so on and so forth. Then you can see I've gone ahead and named them correctly. So that part you can set aside, set some time aside and do. So I leave the rest with you for your own character. Set some time aside and get the expressions that you like. And then you can pause the video and probably go back to it after this step is done. Let's go to the next chapter. Now in this chapter, we are going to clean up our target meshes before we link them into our base mesh. Where do they go? Do they go underneath the character model or inside the global? Well, the reality is neither of them. You still need to group them though, so I'm just going to select all of this 6 target meshes, assuming that that's all I need. I don't want to add any more blend shapes to it. I'm going to name this something meaningful, Blendshape _ GRP, and I'm going to parent it underneath the main scene node, so, or the character node, Billy _ Rick. This should not be parented underneath the geometry nor the global control, but inside the main scene. So make sure to keep that in mind. All right, to connect the blend shapes, it's really simple. You select the target meshes first, shift select the base mesh, make sure to keep that order, not the other way around. You go to Deform, Blend Shape option box, and in here, you can just name the blend shapes whatever you want to name them, but this node would be the node that appears in your channel box as a node, but underneath that these names will appear. So make sure that if you have target meshes, you name them properly so you kind of know what you're looking for. I usually don't change anything, and this advanced automatic usually does a really good job. And then you go create. If you don't name it, you just have blend shape in here. So if I click and open, the first attribute envelope activates or deactivates the blend shape. By default, it's set to 1. It's been activated. And all of these guys are now linked to our base mesh. So if I select our base mesh, all of a sudden, for example, for this smile, I get a cheeky smile. For worried, I get worried, smirk, and then so on and so forth. So whatever you want to have, you can have it. The cool thing about this is, first things first, they're keyable and you can combine them. So if you want to combine, I don't know, for example, disgust and smile, that creates probably something that I don't know what that expression is. But you know, this option is available to you in case if you would like to combine expressions. That's really cool. Now, let's talk about a very common problem that artists encounter when they use blend shapes. Now, that problem happens when you start moving those joints while you have blend shapes on your model. For example, if I go to blend shape and go to worried, because I've got wrap deformer, the eyebrows are going to follow the contour of the face. Fantastic. But what if I want to open the jaw at the same time? You can see it's broken. And that happens a lot. It may not happen to you, but often than not, usually that's the case. This usually happens because of the order of the inputs inside the channel box. You can see that we have blend shapes and skin cluster and tweak of the blend shapes. Now the order is incorrect and we need to fix it. Usually the fastest way of doing this is to right click on the geometry. First things first, I'm going to bring the expression back, and then we right click on the geometry. We go to input and all inputs. Now usually, and that's the beauty of having one blend shape for your character, you deal with only one node in here. And that one node, I need to middle mouse, drag and drop it right at the top. Well, at the bottom in this page, but it becomes at the top of the list. Now with that, if I select the jaw, you can see I'm getting the functionality back. And if I select the face, go to the blend shape, now I can get the result. Beautiful. So you can see how simple that is to tackle those small problems, but now everything is working. Beautiful. Now we're almost done with this chapter, but there's one question. We don't want our animator to select the geometry every single time he or she wants to apply a blend shape. So wouldn't that be better if we transfer all of these attributes onto a control, so we don't need to worry about that? We can actually lock the display layer and not to worry about modifying the geometry by accident. Definitely it's a better idea. So in the next chapter, we are going to take care of that. All right, so I'm not going to kind of make big deal out of this because we have done this in the past many times. I'm going to get my control creator UI, and you can pretty much use any controls. I can probably use arrow and move it up, and we need to rotate it in x-axis 90 degrees. And then I'm going to call this CTRL underscore blend shapes 01. I'll make this yellow. And with that selected, I freeze transformation. Now we've done this in the past where we linked a controller or attribute from our channel box to our control curves. And that can be done through, if I go to General Editors, Connection Editor. And we need to select the mesh, select the blend shapes, and reload it to right. And if I go to weight, there I have it. Now, on this control, I do not have the attributes that I want. So I can, first things first, select everything, lock and hide them, because we don't need to rotate it, translate it, even change the visibility. I'm going to go to Modify, Add Attribute, and let's add those expressions. So smile is the first one. Minimum of 0, maximum of 1, add. Smirk, 0 to 1, add. Worried, 0 to 1, add. Disgust, 0 to 1, add. And U and F, add. Now with those, I'm going to reload to get all these correct channels. Now all I need to do is to connect them. So smile goes to Blendshape Smile Weight. Smirk goes to Blendshape Weight. Worried goes to Worried. Disgust to Disgust. U to U, and F to Blendshape F. Done. Now if I go in here and reset the controller, the value for the jaw, you can see I have every expression that I want at my disposal. At the same time, everything works. Beautiful. You can see how simple this is to get some expressions out of our character. And in no time at all, we created a control to have access to all the target blend shapes for our character. That's pretty much it. Let's do the cleanup and we pretty much wrap up this video. Now we've already done the majority of cleanups through cleaning up the unnecessary channels on our blend shape control, but just to clean up the outliner as well, we can definitely hide our blend shapes so we don't see them. And as for this blend shape control, it can be parented underneath the neck control. So we select the blend shape control and shift select the neck control and press the P key. So when we rotate the neck, everything else follows. In the next video, I'll show you an alternative, another way of achieving the same method. It's going to be a much shorter video because we've already talked about how to assign attributes to the control and how to create expressions using Soft Select tool. So I will just dive right in and talk about the tool that you need to know about to create the same result. Thank you very much for watching and see you in the next video.